Hello, everyone, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director here at USTA Florida. We took a little hiatus from the podcast this summer, and our marketing team did some fantastic spotlights on the Florida Tennis Trail. If you haven't seen those, please check out our social media and our 75th anniversary celebration page to see all the stops on the Florida Tennis Trail, and make sure you stop by and share your visits with us on social media before the end of the year. It's fall now, and we're kicking off our next season of the Here to Serve podcast by focusing on one of our most important events coming up this fall, the USTA Florida annual meeting. My guest today really needs no introduction. Don Davis has been a past president of USTA Florida. He's been a past president of the USTA Florida Section Foundation, and he is currently serving as the chair of our bylaws committee. There is no better person to explain to us what our annual meeting is, why we have it, and who should attend. I hope you enjoy this episode with Don, and for more information on the annual meeting, visit USTAFlorida.com/AM2024. Don, thank you for joining me for this first of our fall series of Here to Serve podcast. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I know we talk a lot day in and day out, but today we actually are going to tackle one of my favorite topics, which is our annual meeting of the membership. And as chair of the bylaws committee, I thought you would be the absolute perfect person to walk us through a little bit of the highlights of what this meeting is, why we do it, and, why people should attend it. So why don't we start with what is this annual meeting of the membership that we do?
Well, the annual meeting of the membership is where the officers of the board of directors and the senior staff provide what I like to think of as the state of the association, like a state of the union. And this is the state of the association. There's a report from the president. There's a report from the treasurer. The secretary takes the minutes of this meeting, which are then developed into a meeting report, which is presented at the following annual meeting for approval. And then senior staff present the previous year's results, which includes actions that are taken in support of the association's strategic plan. In even years, it's also where the new board of directors is sworn in and they take their office for the 2-year term.
And this is an even year, so we get to do that this time around. And we're actually going to have another podcast later this fall where we get to meet our new board members, so we won't spoil the fun there. But let's talk a little bit about why we do this meeting. It is a requirement in our bylaws. And is that unusual? Is this a normal requirement in a nonprofit association bylaws? Why do we do this every year?
Well, it is in our bylaws that we have a meeting every year. It happens to be Article 4, Section 1 that says there shall be an annual meeting of the association. The second item there is that the board of directors determines the date of that annual meeting. We have traditionally always had ours in kind of mid-fall, if you will, November timeframe. It is something that's in our bylaws. So we have a requirement that the call for the meeting go out 30 days prior to the organizational members and the section and the delegates for those organizational members. So yeah, it's part of our bylaws, which is one of our corporate documents. As you know, we're a Florida corporation, and one of our corporate documents is the bylaws.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned sort of the notifications. I think a lot of people kind of wonder, how the date gets chosen, when we put information out. We have a lot of high performing humans here, so I get a lot of questions of when's our fall meeting, about 90 days ahead of time. And the good news for us is by the time we put the slate out in July, people can pretty much guess that we're going to do the meeting because there's some dates associated with that. So this year's annual meeting being November 9th. We actually have just put out the notice on October 1st, so we gave a little bit of a buffer there, a little more than 30 days. We don't like to go down to the wire. And we've started doing this meeting virtually during COVID, and we found that more people could actually attend it that way because they didn't have to get in their car, drive somewhere, stay overnight. So can you talk a little bit about who comes to the meeting, like why delegates and members should attend, but why anybody should attend this meeting, and what are our requirements for the attendees who are going to join us?
Sure. Well, any member of USTA living in the state of Florida or registered under the state of Florida certainly should attend this meeting. Like I said, it's where you find out what has happened for the whole year. So any member of the USTA ought to be coming to our meeting and learning a little bit about what we've done for the past year, and also from a strategic standpoint, what our plans are going forward, usually for the next year. Delegates for organizational members, that's a different story. We need to have them there. They are the voting members, and when we have issues that come before the association, they're the ones that will vote on those issues. So they need to, one, be registered as the delegate for the organization, and so that we know who they are, and so that we can communicate with them and get the information out to them about what will be happening at the meetings. They can vote on a myriad of different issues that we may have. We don't have them that often, but one of them is to elect the nominating committee. And the nominating committee is the committee. It's one of our standing committees. It's the first standing committee listed in our bylaws. And it's a very important committee. I won't go into the detail necessarily unless you really want me to about who's eligible and how they get voted.
No, we actually have all that on our website. So at the end of today's discussion, we'll send people there and you can read all about that. But I'm glad you mentioned the nominating committee, because that was another reason we decided to do this meeting virtually, is that it really helps us do a better job of identifying candidates for the nominating committee and having them ready as we go into the meeting to do a more efficient election of the nominating committee, so to speak, during the meeting. So please continue on the nominating committee, because I do know that that's an important part of this year's meeting. And I think it's the first thing on the agenda typically that we do, or pretty quick on the agenda.
It can be. It is probably at this annual meeting will be the most important thing. And really the nominating committee is probably one of our most important committees, because it presents the slate of incoming officers. And it, of course, we're a volunteer-led organization with a board of directors, and that board of directors makes all of the important decisions going forward about the direction for the association. So being a member of the nominating committee is a very important task. There are some criteria. The incoming president or the president-elect is the chair of the nominating committee. There will be 4 other members. 4 different regions need to be represented on the nominating committee. If you've served on the past 2 nominating committees, you cannot serve going forward on the next one. No member of the nominating committee can be nominated for a position on the board of directors. So only accept a nomination to be on the nominating committee if you do not intend to try for a board position.
Right.
And there are a few other things. Those are the ones just off the top of my head. And again, that all of that information is listed in our bylaws, so it's easy enough to find.
Yeah. And one of those really important things which has come up, I think it came up the last time we did the election, is You have to have served as part of an organizational group over the last 4 years. So that includes committees, leadership academy, formal project teams. And so we have a list of all the individuals who've been involved. So if you haven't been involved in a committee or a project team or anything like that to date, you wouldn't actually be able to be on the nominating committee. But it's a great opportunity to raise your hand and say, hey, I really am interested in serving the organization, and get onto a committee or a project team or a task force. We do have project teams that start throughout the year. Don's been on quite a few of them over the last 2 years. So we get that question a lot of, can anyone's name sort of just raise their hand and say, I want to be on there? No, you technically have to have served in another formal capacity over the last 4 years to be eligible. And all of this information is actually on our website as well, as Don mentioned.
Well, and that group includes the board of directors. If you were a member
Correct.
of the board of directors, you can be on the nominating committee. And the other part of that is, why do we have that rule? Well, people need to be on the nominating committee. People need to be aware of what the association is doing, what our goals are, what our strategic plan is. And so by participating in some of the things that you just mentioned, you become familiar with the association and what's needed going forward from our leadership.
Well, Don, you have done such a good job covering those 3 things: what our meeting is, why we have it, and who should attend. That's really all we had to cover today. Any other guidance you'd like to give to our audience when it comes to attending the annual meeting this year? Anything you'd like them to know about the organization?
Nothing in particular, other than if you're new to an annual meeting, I think you're going to find it very helpful to understand what USTA Florida is all about and strategically where we're headed. We have a lot of things going on in tennis these days and a lot of things outside of tennis that impact us. And so a lot of those things will be mentioned in the various reporting at the annual meeting. So it's a great place to catch up and learn. I will just, a shameless sort of plug, I will just mention one other thing. Not only attend the annual meeting, but get on the list for our e-weekly newsletter, because you get a lot of information about the association from that newsletter. So don't just come to our annual meeting. Definitely get on the newsletter, and pretty soon we'll have you involved.
Yeah, that's a great point. And our marketing team didn't pay you to say that, but we tell people that all the time when they say, oh, I don't know what's going on. And I say, get the weekly e-news, listen to the podcast. Now that we're back in fall season, we'll have a lot more podcast content this fall. Follow us on social media. There's so much happening this year. We've got our 75th anniversary. We've got some big things coming up this fall for that. But all of the information that you ever need can be found on USTAFlorida.com. And the specific information for this year's annual meeting will be found at USTAFlorida.com/AM2024. So check it out. You'll get the agenda, the registration link, all of that good stuff. And you can also contact us at any time with questions. So Don, thank you so much for serving on so many of our committees, but particularly for bylaws and for being such a good steward of the organization. I look forward to seeing you on the 9th, and hopefully we'll have some great and exciting updates for everyone. So thank you.
There we go. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it, Laura.
That's all for this episode of the Here to Serve podcast. I hope you enjoyed our guest today. For more episodes of the Here to Serve podcast, including all of our fall topics, guests, and dates, visit USTAFlorida.com/here to serve.